Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai. Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan ki jai. Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Mayapur Dham ki jai. Yamuna Mai ki jai. Ganga Mai ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Bhakti Maharani ki jai. Samadeva Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
To the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
Glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
Glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Namo Om.
Hare Hare Bol.
Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityananda. Hare Krishna. Good morning, everybody. I hope everyone's well rested after a busy weekend. Thanks for showing up. Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, The Creation, Chapter 12, The Birth of Emperor Parikshit, Text 20. Eshadatta Sharanyascha Yata Hyoshi Narashibhi Yashovitanita Swanam Doshyantir Eva Yajvanam. Eshadatta Sharanyascha Yata Hyoshi Narashibhi Yashovitanita Swanam Doshyantir Eva Yajvanam. Eshadatta Sharanyascha Yata Yoshi Narashibhi Yashovitanita Swanam Doshyantir Eva Yajvanam. Everyone chant, please.
Hare Krishna. Eshadata Sharanyascha Yatha hi Aushinarah Sivi Yasho Vitanita Swanam Doshantir Eva Yajvanam.
Hare Krishna. Esadata saranyascha yatha hiya ausinaraha sivi yaso bitnita swanam dasyantir iva yajvanam. Hare Krishna.
Yeshadata sharanyascha yatahi aushinara shivi yasho vitanita swanam daushinyati iva yashvanam. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Eshadata sharanyascha yatha yoshi narahasibi yasho vita nita svanam doshyanti riva yajvanam. Hare Krishna.
Anyone else? Okay, word for word translation. Esha, this child. Data, donor in charity. Sharanya, protector of the surrendered. Cha, and. Yata, as. He, certainly. Oshinara, the country named Ushinara. Shibi, Shibi. Yasha, fame. Vitanita, disseminator. Swanam, of the kinsman. Doshyanti Eva, like Bharata, the son of Dushyanta, Yajvanam, of those who have performed many sacrifices. Translation: this child will be a munificent donor of charity and protector of the surrendered, like the famous King Shibi of the Ushanara country, and he will expand the name and fame of his family like Bharata, the son of Maharaj Dushyanta. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. A king becomes famous by his acts of charity, performance of yagyas, protection of the surrendered, etc. A Kshatriya king is proud to give protection to the surrendered souls. This attitude of the king is called Ishwara Bhav, or factual power to give protection in a righteous cause. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord instructs living beings to surrender unto him, and he promises all protection. The Lord is all-powerful and true to his word, and therefore he never fails to give protection to his different devotees. The king, being the representative of the Lord, must possess this attitude of giving protection to the surrendered souls at all risk. Maharaj Shibi, the king of Ushinara, was an intimate friend of Maharaj Yayati, who was able to reach the heavenly planets along with Maharaj Shibi. Maharaj Shibi was aware of the heavenly planet where he was to be transferred after his death, and the description of this heavenly planet is given in the Mahabharata, Adi Parva, chapter 96, text 6 through 9. Maharaj Shibi was so charitably disposed that he wanted to give over his acquired position in the heavenly kingdom to Yayati, but he did not accept it. Yayati went to the heavenly planet along with great rishis like Ashtaka and others. On inquiry from the rishis, Yayati gave an account of Shibi's pious acts when all of them were on the path to heaven. He has become a member of the assembly of Yamaraj, who has become his worshipable deity. As confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, the worshipper of the demigods goes to the planets of the demigods. Yanti Deva Vrataha Devan. So Maharaj Shibi has become an associate of the great Vaishnava authority Yamaraj on that particular planet. While he was on the earth, he became very famous as a protector of surrendered souls and a donor of charities. The king of heaven once took the shape of a pigeon hunter bird, eagle, and Agni, the fire god, took the shape of a pigeon. The pigeon, while being chased by the eagle, took shelter on the lap of Maharaj Shibi, and the hunter eagle wanted the pigeon back from the king. The king wanted to give it some other meat to eat and requested the bird not to kill the pigeon. The hunter bird refused to accept the king's offer, but it was settled later on that the eagle would accept flesh from the body of the king of the pigeon's equivalent weight. The king began to cut flesh from his body to weigh in the balance, equivalent to the weight of the pigeon. But the mystic pigeon always remained heavier. The king then put himself on the balance to equate with the pigeon, and the demigods were pleased with him. The king of heaven and the fire god disclosed their identity, and the king was blessed by them. Devarshi Narada also glorified Maharaj Shibi for his great achievements, specifically in charity and protection. Maharaj Shibi sacrificed his own son for the satisfaction of human beings in his kingdom, and thus child Parikshit was to become a second Shibi in charity and protection. Dushyanti Bharata. There are many Bharatas in history, of which Bharata, the brother of Lord Rama, Bharata, the son of King Rishabha, and Bharata, the son of Maharaj Dushyanta, are very famous. And all these Bharatas are historically known to the universe. This earth planet is known as Bharata, or Bharatavarsh, due to King Bharata, the son of Rishabha. But according to some, this land is known as Bharata due to the reign of the son of Dushyanta. So far as we are concerned, this land's name, Bharatavarsh, was established from the reign of Bharata, the son of King Rishabha. Before him, the land was known as Ilavritavarsh, but just after the coronation of Bharata, King Rishabha, This land became famous as Bharatavarsh. But despite all this, Bharata, the son of Maharaj Dushyanta, was not less important. He is the son of the famous beauty Shakuntala. Maharaj Dushyanta fell in love with Shakuntala in the forest, and Bharata was conceived. After that, Maharaj forgot his wife Shakuntala by the curse of Kanva Muni, and the child Bharata was brought up in the forest by his mother. Even in his childhood, he was so powerful that he challenged the lions and elephants in the forest and would fight with them as little children play with cats and dogs. Because of the boys becoming so strong, more than the so-called modern Tarzan, the rishis in the forest called him Sarva Damana, or one who is able to control everyone. A full description of Maharaj Bharata is given in the Mahabharata. Adi Parva. The Pandavas or the Kurus are sometimes addressed as Bharata due to being born in the dynasty of the famous Maharaj Bharata, the son of King Dushyanta. Eshadatta Sharanyascha Yata Yoshina Rashibi Yashovitanita Swanam Dosyantir Eva Yajvanam. This child will be a munificent donor of charity and protector of the surrendered, like the famous King Shibi of the Ushanara country. And he will expand the name and fame of his family like Bharata, the son of Maharaj Dushyanta. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nevashesha Shanyavadi Paschadade Shatarine. Hare Krishna. I'll get to it later in the class, but I was just noticing Prabhupada in the beginning of the purport starts talking about the heavenly planets. And he said, oh, there's a description of the heavenly planets in Mahabharata Adi Parva, chapter 96. And I've read that several times over the course of the year, but I never looked up that Mahabharata reference until a few days ago. And it's interesting, and we'll get to it later, why it's an interesting reference. But this is how a person is glorified. You glorify a person by how they stack up, how they compare to the great sages and the great kings of old. Instead of saying you're the greatest, say you're great in the way that your father, your grandfather, your ancestors are great. You're following in their footsteps. You're a worthy member of this dynasty like that. Not just independently glorifying them, how pretty you are, how charitable you are, all done in the context of these great kings and great acharyas and great persons of the past. And especially in this verse, these are all persons who are related to Parikshit, their ancestors. So Lord Brahma created the universe, and from him many sages came. One of them was the sage Atri, and descending in the family lineage from the sage Atri is the great king Yayati, who's mentioned in the Bhagavatam and whose story is told in the Bhagavatam, and he's mentioned in this verse, and descended from Yayati some generations after. This is not one generation at a time, but then comes Puru, the head of the famous Puru dynasty, and descended from him further down is Maharaj Dushyanta, mentioned in today's verse, and his son Bharata. And then further descended from him is Shantanu, the great king Shantanu we know of, who we'll also get to later in this class. And then from him, the Pandu and the Pandavas, and now Parikshit. So this is the lineage. And Maharaj Shibi in particular is descended from Yayati, or a friend of Yayati, as Prabhupada says in this purport. And the story is briefly mentioned that Yayati was wandering. Oh no, I'm sorry. Now I'm confusing Dushyanta with Yayati. Yayati, he had his one wife, and then he had his second wife, Sarmishta. So from that second wife, Sarmishta, after all the politics and cursing and back and forth that went along with that particular union, descended from Yayishta is King Shibi in that line from Yayati. And this Shibi is very famous in the Vedic literatures, just like mentioned in the Bhagavatam, in the Mahabharata, when Kunti tested out the mantra she got, and she was calling on, she called on, who was first? Was Suryadev was the first, that's right. Suryadev was the first and produced the child Karna. But then later on, when at the instruction of her husband, she called on Lord Indra and was impregnated by him, and she was pregnant with the child. And when the child Arjuna was born, a voice came from the sky, and Akashvani, this voice from the sky, loudly proclaimed, "This child will be glorious. He will be as powerful as Kartavir Arjuna and as powerful as King Shibi." So again, King Shibi is a example of a super excellent king, Maharaj Shibi. And specifically in regard, who else? Also another little side note, that Mitravinda, the princess that Krishna married later on, was also a descendant of King Shibi. So all of these family relationships are there, of all these important people, and all the glorification is done like this. And Maharaj Shibi in particular, his example specifically was a willingness to sacrifice his life for the benefit of others. The obvious example, the day after Vyasa Puja, is of course Srila Prabhupada. After Prabhupada was in New York for a little while, maybe even less than a year, he said to some of his young followers, he was telling them about living in Vrindavan. And he said, "Oh, Vrindavan is so nice. When you go there and see how nice Vrindavan is, you'll never understand how I could have left Vrindavan for this awful New York City." So Prabhupada is one of those great persons, also gave his life for the benefit of others. And Maharaj Shibi, the ancestor of Parikshit, is also an example. He gave his life, willingness to sacrifice his life for the benefit of others. And the story is mentioned there briefly in the purport. Maharaj Shibi was a great king, a powerful king, a genuine Rajarshi, not just a king, but a saintly person, a saintly king. And the demigods decided to test him and also to reward him because they knew how great he was. So Indra took the form of an eagle, and Agni Dev took the form of a pigeon, Kapota. And in those bodies, the eagle was chasing the pigeon because pigeons are a favorite food of the eagles. And I'm not sure if that pigeon described in the Mahabharata is the same species of pigeon like we have littering the streets of our cities now. But anyway, some small, insignificant common bird is the food of the eagles. And that pigeon was fleeing from the eagle and took shelter on the lap of Maharaj Shibi. And the eagle came and said, "Maharaj Shibi, of course, you're a very great king, whatever, but give me what is mine. You should not withhold this pigeon from me." And Maharaj Shibi was going, "But he took shelter of me, so how could I allow him to die to be your food if he's taken shelter of me?" And the eagle, actually in the Mahabharata, it's a very intricate discussion of morals and dharma and responsibility. And the eagle was like, "Well, I'm also a member of your kingdom, and don't I also deserve to eat? So you should also supply me the pigeon." And then the king was like, "But the pigeon took shelter of me." So it was a big dilemma. And we've seen these other moral dilemmas in the Bhagavatam, most recently Arjuna with Drona's son, Ashwatthama. How did I forget that? I'm getting old. Yeah, with Ashwatthama's son, kill him, don't kill him, kill him, don't kill him. And he had to work out this very paradoxical or contradictory instruction. So similarly, Shivi was in this position. So it's my duty as a king to feed the eagle. It's my duty as a king, not only as a king, as a person, to protect the pigeon. It's contradictory. What should I do? And there was big discussion of what's the proper dharma. So finally he said, okay, the only way I could do both, he said, you just want this little pigeon, I'll sacrifice an ox and give you the entire ox to eat. And the eagle's like, no, thanks. That's not my assigned food. It's been assigned by Lord Brahma, which animals are predators and which animals are prey, and which animals are prey for which animals. So give me my suitable meal. And then Maharaj Shivi suggested, I'll give you the flesh of my own body equal to the weight of this pigeon. And that was agreeable to the eagle. So someone was assigned with a knife to start removing flesh from Shivi's body and put it on a balance with the pigeon on one side and Shivi's cut off flesh on the other side. And they cut off some flesh and the pigeon was still heavier. And they cut off more and they cut off more and they cut off more, but the pigeon was still heavier, so that Maharaj Shivi had to place his entire body on the scale and still was unable to balance out the scale. So he was failure in his sacrifice in one sense, just like Bali Maharaj also. Bali Maharaj said, I'll give you 3 steps of land. So with one step, Vamanadev covered the lower half of the universe. With the second step, he covered the upper half of the universe. And he told Bali, you failed in your promise, because you offered 3 steps. I've taken 2 steps and there's nothing left. So in a situation like that, all you can do is surrender to the Lord. And Vamanadev placed his foot on Bali's head, and thus Bali was honored and purified and given a great kingdom, and his vow was kept. So similarly, Shivi was willing to sacrifice his entire life for the sake of this. And when he did that sacrifice, then the eagle and the pigeon revealed who they were and blessed him and offered him whatever blessings or going to the heavenly planets they were willing to offer. But this is the willingness of a great soul to sacrifice for the sake of others. Someone like myself, I am so unwilling to sacrifice for the sake of someone else. If someone needs a little money, I think, oh my God, I don't have much money. Do I have to give someone some money? Or someone, my car broke down. Can you help me push it to the gas station? Like, oh, my back's already sore. Do I want to help? Or what to speak of Krishna consciousness, going out and preaching or something like that. I'm so reluctant. But the example is these great souls who were willing to give, or Srila Prabhupada, what were they willing to sacrifice for the sake of not benefiting themselves, but benefiting others? This is the position of a great king. This is the position of a great devotee, that they have that willingness. This is also described in the Bhagavatam in the 10th canto. Very nice section. It's in the chapter Krishna stealing the clothes of the gopis. But after that pastime was over, that pastime, of course, happened in the winter. It was winter, it was cold, and the young gopi girls were freezing in the water. But then it jumped, after that pastime is completed, it jumps a few months in the future to summertime. And in the summertime pastime, Krishna is out with the cowherd boys. And he says to them, this is from the Bhagavatam 10th canto, chapter 22. Lord Krishna said, O Stoka Krishna and Amshu, O Sridham, Subal and Arjuna, O Vishala, Vrishabha, Ojasvi, Deva, Prashta, and Varutapa. Just see these greatly fortunate trees whose lives are completely dedicated to the benefit of others. Even while tolerating the wind, rain, heat, and snow, they protect us from these elements. Text 33. Just see how these trees are maintaining every living entity. Their birth is successful. Their behavior is just like that of great personalities. For anyone who asks anything from a tree never goes away disappointed. These trees fulfill one's desires with their leaves, flowers, and fruits, their shade, roots, bark, and wood, and also with their fragrance, their sap, ashes, pulp, and shoots. And in that last verse of that segment, text 35, Etavaj janmasapalayam dehinam iha dehishu pranar artar diavacha shreya acharanam sada. It is the duty of every living being to perform welfare activities for the benefit of others with his life, wealth, intelligence, and words. So this is a really beautiful description. Etavaj janma sapalyam, janma sapal, that your life, janma, your birth, sapalyam, pal is fruit. So your life is fruitful. Your life has borne its fruit. When? Dehinam iha deheshu. When you sacrifice your body for the sake of others who are embodied. Pranar, artar, diavacha. How do you sacrifice your body? Your prana, with your life itself. Artar, with your wealth. Diya, with your intelligence. And vacha, with your words. Shreya, acharanam sada. Shreya means the ultimate benefit. Acharanam, this is also very interesting, commenting on this verse. Prabhupada says acharanam, achar means behavior. There's achar and prachar. Achar is behavior, prachar is preaching. So achar means practical behavior. So Prabhupada said this means practically you have to do something for others. Nowadays, you know, you're considered an activist or a helper of humanity if you could craft a clever hashtag that gains some traction on Twitter. But Shreya Acharanam, you have to actually do something practical. What are you willing to do to help others? What are you willing to sacrifice? What are you willing to give up for the benefit of others? And that's preaching. At least for someone who doesn't have yet a spontaneous taste for preaching, preaching means making a sacrifice. Serving Krishna means making a sacrifice. You have your money and you were maybe planning in your head that I'm going to save it for this or that, or I'm going to invest it, or I'm going to put it in my 401k. But then you think, okay, that's what I wanted to do, but I have to sacrifice that, go against my baser nature, my baser desires, and do it for Krishna, spend it for Krishna, or spend it for the benefit of others through preaching Krishna consciousness. Your wealth, your intelligence, studying scriptures is not just to be a great scholar, it's to be able to give this knowledge to others. So you develop your intelligence, you speak for the benefit of others. You're speaking, Bhagavad Gita says that it should be truthful and pleasing. What's that? Very nice letter from Prabhupada to Sumati Morarji. That in BTG there was an article printed about Lord Chaitanya's interactions with Vallabha Acharya. And Sumati Morarji was a follower of Vallabha Acharya. And in those interactions, sometimes Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because they were also close friends, there was a little joking criticism by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. What was it? He told him, "Oh, you're rejecting the commentary of Sridhar Swami." And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "I think that someone who rejects the Swami is no better than a prostitute. because Swami means Sridhar Swami, and Swami also means the husband. So a woman who rejects her husband for another man is like a prostitute. So he spoke like this in these critical but joking words. And Sumati Maharaj was a little bit upset, and Prabhupada wrote a beautiful letter talking about, yes, I'm sorry you're upset, but this is the actual history, the actual scripture. We can't change it. Try to understand. It was joking words between friends. He was teaching a lesson. And then Prabhupada quoted this aphorism. I'm not sure the source of it. Satyam bruyat, priyam bruyat. That you should speak satyam bruyat, you should speak the truth, but you should also speak it in a pleasing way. So he explained like that. I'm sorry if it wasn't pleasing. The truth should be spoken, and the truth should also be spoken in a pleasing way. And then he said, but in matters of scripture and matters of philosophy, even if it's not pleasing, we have to speak the truth. But anyway, the point is that vacha, your words have to be spoken the truth and in a pleasing way so that people can benefit. Just like in book distribution, Prabhupada expected devotees to be truthful and forward in their preaching, but he said, but if by your preaching you make someone angry and they go away, then that's your nonsense. So all of these things, we give our life, we give our wealth, we give our intelligence and our words for the benefit of others, like Maharaj Shibi. This was his example. And therefore, this is the relevant example to the greatness of Parikshit Maharaj, who also did this. While he was a king, he worked tirelessly to maintain his kingdom, which was as glorious as a kingdom in Satya Yuga, even though it was now Kali Yuga. And he fought back the influence of Kali, and he protected the citizens, and they were healthy and happy and pious and all devoted to Krishna. And when the time came to actually literally give up his life, he willingly did that to give us Srimad Bhagavatam. What greater gift, giving up your life to give us Srimad Bhagavatam? This is an amazing sacrifice, 100,000 billion times more than giving your life for a pigeon or even for Agni Dev. To give the world Srimad Bhagavatam is an incalculable charity to the world. So this is Maharaj Shibi. The other person mentioned in the verse is Doshyanti Bharata. Prabhupada says there's many famous Bharatas. There's Ram Lakshman Bharata Satrugna Bharata. There's Bharata Maharaj, the son of Rishabhadev. Prabhupada mentions the little controversy. Is it called Bharata Varsh because of Dushyanti Bharata, or is it called Bharata Varsh because of Rishabha Bharata? And actually, I did a little bit of research, and even in Indian historical documents, there's actually differences of opinion on which Bharata Varsh is named after. But Prabhupada says we accept, for our part, we say it's son of Rishabha. But in any case, and he also says, but Bharata, the son of Dushyanta, was no less. And his history is also quite amazing. He was a big king, Bharata, or actually at the time he was a prince, I think, son of the most powerful king Dushyanta. And actually, before he was born, Dushyanta was going in the forest on his kingly whatever he was doing, and he met the beautiful heavenly damsel Shakuntala, and they fell in love, and they had what is known as Gandharva marriage. Gandharva marriage basically means you have relations and you consider yourself married. It's considered marriage. And so after that brief meeting, Dushyanta told Shakuntala, you stay here. I'm going back to kingdom. I'm a prince now. I'm going to become king. And then in a little while you come and I'll accept you as my proper wife and you'll be my queen. So he returned. There were some intricacies and wrongdoings. So there was a curse that Dushyanta would forget all about Shakuntala. So after some years, so Shakuntala was in the forest, living in the hermitages of the sages, and she became pregnant and gave birth to the son Bharata. And as Prabhupada described, he was so powerful, Sarva Damana. He was able to subdue anyone and anything. Damana, like Kaliya Damana or Keshi Damana, Krishna is known as, because he subdued the Kaliya serpent. He could subdue any demon. So Damana. And Bharata was Sarva Damana. He could subdue anyone. And as little children may play with cats and dogs, jump and roll with them or pull their tails, he was doing with the big jungle animals. The elephants and lions he was playing with as a child. And then finally when Bharata was, I think, 6 years old, Shakuntala thought, okay, it's time to go to my husband or my husband-to-be in the kingdom. And she went, and Dushyanta, due to the curse, or there's different versions of the story, but due to the curse or due to his irresponsibility, however you analyze, he said, I don't recognize you. I've never seen you before. I don't know who you are. I don't know who this child with you is. Get out, go away. And Shakuntala was very upset and very angry. And as she was leaving with her son, again, another divine voice from the sky saying, Dushyanta, this is actually your wife Shakuntala. Don't you remember? And this is your son Bharata. You have to accept her. And then he accepted, and Bharata was raised like that. So he grew up to be so powerful, Bharata Maharaj, and he subjugated actually the entire world under his kingdom. He was the emperor of the world, which is why sometimes some people say Bharatavash is referring to this Dushyanti Brahmana. But he was another so powerful. So these are the two kings given as examples that Parikshit Maharaj is compared to and expected to measure up to. The choice of these two kings is significant. Of course, so many kings and so many persons are mentioned, Arjuna and Lord Ram, and he's like the Himalayas and giving shelter. So many examples are given. But in this particular verse, I think Shibi and Bharata are significant as examples. Shibi is noted for his morality, for his charity, for his willingness to sacrifice for others. And Bharata is noted for his power, his strength, his tejas. So these two qualities combined is what makes a perfect king, what makes a perfect leader. So therefore, that's how I'm seeing why the Brahmanas selected these two persons as examples. So powerful, but at the same time, such a heart, such a knowledge of right and wrong and dharma and charity and giving and sacrifice for the benefits of others. Because any one of those without the other is less desirable. Here's a mundane example. Sometimes it's said about Mussolini, the fascist leader of Italy before and during World War II. Very cruel and restrictive dictator, awful leader. But sometimes it's not true, but sometimes it's said of Mussolini, you may have heard this before, that, oh, at least he had the trains running on time. So Mussolini was very powerful, and it's not true. It's just sort of a trope that's developed that Mussolini had the trains running on time. But if we accept that, okay, he was powerful, he was a good manager, he organized it that the trains are running on time, so things are going on. But he was so cruel and so racist and hard-hearted and evil. And of course, the end of his life is also horrible. So he had some strength, but he lacked any heart. He lacked any knowledge of mercy, of caring for others, of dharma, of morality. He lacked that. And of course, the perfect Vedic version of that example is the cruel king Vena. Vena was so powerful. He was so powerful that he actually eliminated all crime and all thieves and all thievery and cheating, and everything was completely eliminated from his kingdom. He was so powerful, and we might say that's a good thing. It is a good thing. He eliminated all crime because he was so strong, so powerful. But because he lacked any sense of spiritual knowledge, any sense of humility, any sense of dharma or morality, he became the greatest rascal ever. He said, why are you Brahmanas worshiping Vishnu? Don't worship Vishnu, worship me. I'm the source of everything. I'm the Lord of everything. You worship me instead of Vishnu. So here's another person. He had power. He had potency like Bharata Maharaj. Or maybe not just like him, but he was powerful. But he lacked that sense of humility, of self-sacrifice for the benefit of others, of religion and dharma. He completely lacked that. And therefore, despite his great power, he was unfit. And the Brahmanas cursed him to die on the spot. And actually, when he died, this is also nice in the Bhagavatam, when he died, the sages who were responsible for his death looked out on the horizon and they saw in the distance a big cloud of dust rising in the distance. And they could understand, oh, this is all the thieves and rogues and cheaters and criminals coming out of hiding. Now that there's no longer a great king to keep them in check. So a king has to have that power. And he also has to have that dharma, that working for the benefit of others. So therefore, these two people are mentioned because this is Parikshit. He had the power and he had the sense of sacrifice. He was a perfect king. This is the Kshatriya. Soryam tejo dratir dakshyam yude chapya palayanam dhanam ishwara bhavascha kshatram karma swabhavajam. That the Kshatriya, like powerful like Bharata Maharaj, he has to be Soryam, heroic. Tejo, powerful like the sun. Driti, he has to be so determined like a rock in his determination. Daksham, he has to be very expert. Expert means he's able to accomplish all of his ends perfectly. And Yudhe Chapya Palayanam, but he has to be expert in fighting for the protection of others. And Dhanam, he has to give in charity. Ishwarabhav, Ishwarabhav, literally, Ishwarabhav means the mood of being Ishwara, the mood of being the controller. But Prabhupada explains, and Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti in his comment also explains the same way. See if I could quickly find that. Where Prabhupada says, maybe I can't find it quickly, but Prabhupada in the purport today explains that Ishwara Bhav means fighting for the protection of others. This is the actual meaning of Ishwara Bhav, not just being a Ishwara that, oh, I'm the boss, I'm the controller. What's that? Ishwara ham aham bhogi, siddhoham balavan sukhi. I'm the controller, I'm powerful, I'm this, I'm that. But no, Ishwara Bhavs means you're protecting for the benefit of all others. You're working for the benefit of all others. This is Ishwara Bhav. And this is explained even in more detail in the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is, what is it, Narada Muni speaking to Yudhishthira, where he's also discussing the different varnas and ashrams in the 7th canto. And it's similar to the Bhagavad Gita verse, but goes into a little more into the giving and dharmic nature of the Kshatriya. Shoryam Viryam Dhritis Tejas, which is almost the same as the Bhagavad Gita verse. Tyagas Chatma Jayak Shama, Brahmanyata Prasadas Cha, Satyam Sha Kshatra Lakshanam. So Soryam Viryam Dhritis Tejas, this is the powerful side of the Kshatriya. Power, heroism, steadiness, steadfastness, expertise. But Tyagas, he's also able to renounce. Tyagas Chatma Jayak Shama. He's able to tolerate, he's able to forgive, and he's able to renounce things for his own benefit. He renounce things that are for his own benefit, for the benefit of others. Brahmanyata Prasadas Cha. He's dedicated to supporting the Brahminical principles. I think it was it Thursday when Drona Prabhu was giving class, and in the purport, Prabhupada mentions this word, Brahmanya Dharma, that the kings have to support. And in this verse in the Bhagavatam, Brahmanyata Prasadascha, that he's dedicated to the Brahminical principles. And Satyam, truthfulness, Kshatra Lakshanam, these are the symptoms of a of a kshatriya, and also prasadas, that he's very jolly and satisfied. Not that he's always hankering about this or that. I want more. But he's completely satisfied, almost like a brahmana. Therefore, the real Raja is the Raja Rishi, the Rajarshi. And this is the hope and the expectation for a great soul like Maharaj Parikshit. Such a great lineage coming down through Dushyanta Bharata. Many times in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is referred to as Bharata or Bharatarshava, the best of the Bharatas. So this is a glorious dynasty. The Pandus, the Bharatas, the Purus, these great dynasties that these persons came in were so glorious, and it was expected that the descendants would also be glorious just like their ancestors. That's another reason why Maharaj Vena was such a disappointment. Such a disappointment. And then finally, let's go back to the beginning of that purport, where Prabhupada says, talks about the heavenly planets. And he says, the heavenly planets are described in this Adi Parva chapter, whatever it was, 96. And I didn't know what that was. Like I said, I read this verse over the course of years a bunch of times, and I never thought to look it up, or when I figured, describing the heavenly planets, it's very opulent. And we know, we've heard about the heavenly planets. It's so opulent, and you live such a long time, and it's pious, and you get to enjoy like mad, and everything's beautiful. So when I actually looked up the reference that Prabhupada gave for how to understand the heavenly planets, it was very surprising reference, because it described a little bit of the unsteadiness and the imperfectness of the heavenly planets. And here's the story that's described in that part of the Mahabharata. It's a very interesting story. There was a great king whose name was Mahabhisha. And Mahabhisha was so pious, so powerful king, and such pious king, a great king in every way. He had performed 1,000 Ashwamedha sacrifices and 100 Rajasuya sacrifices. And even, again, we were hearing a few days ago when Parikshit was compared to Lord Ram, even Lord Ram only performed like 10 Rajasuya sacrifices. So this Mahabhishi was so pious, did all these sacrifices, and he actually got to elevate himself. He actually went to the heavenly planets and got to be a resident of the heavenly realm. Now, while he was living there for some time, and he was very satisfied that I performed my sacrifices, I was very pious, and now I'm enjoying in the heavenly planets. Then he heard, there's a big festival going on. All the residents of the heavenly planets are getting together in order to worship and pay respects to Lord Brahma, who is the leader of us all. So all of the devas and devatas and sages and all the residents of the heavenly planet went, and Mahabhisha also went to this great sacrifice. And at the time they were there, all of the devatas were there, including Ganga Devi, the goddess of the Ganga River, personified. She was there. And at the time of that meeting, all of a sudden there was a big gust of wind blew. And the wind, these Mahabharata stories, they're a little nutty sometimes, but they're so amazing and entertaining and instructive. A big wind blew up all of a sudden and blew up Ganga's dress to expose her nakedness by this gust of wind. I'm not even going to say. But anyway, so when that happened, all of the demigods there and all of the sages, they all became embarrassed, and they all turned their head away and looked down, and were sort of, acting shyly like that, ignoring the display of Ganga's naked beauty. But Maharaj Mahabhisha, maybe because he was just too lusty, or maybe because he was just a new resident of the heavenly planets, he couldn't control himself, and he was just like staring at Ganga. He couldn't tear his eyes away from her beauty. And the sages saw his behavior, and they were very critical. And word got back to Lord Brahma, and he told Mahabhisha you've come to the heavenly planets, but you're acting in this awful, lusty way. Obviously, you're not really qualified to be here. I curse you to take birth again on the earthly planets. And of course, he was disappointed and he begged some mercy of Lord Brahma. And Lord Brahma said, okay, I can't take back my curse. You have to be born in these earthly planets again due to your offense. But because your background is so pious, I'll let you choose who your father is in that birth. And after that birth, you could return. So he was cursed and he left the assembly. He was cursed. He had to fall down. And as his father, he chose, well, I've heard that on the earth right now, the greatest king on the entire earth planet at this time is the great King Pratipa. So I choose to be his child. So, okay, down you go. So after that meeting was over, Ganga was walking away and she was actually thinking, maybe she was embarrassed, but she was also thinking, oh, that Mahabisha, he seemed to like me. He appreciated my beauty. Maybe he's not that bad, or I don't want to put words in her mouth, but something like that. And she was walking away from the sacrifice and she saw there the 8 Vasus, who are a type of demigod, and they were looking so sad and dejected and depressed and just laying on the ground and like bemoaning their fate. And she said, dear Vasus, what's happened? Why are you in this state? What happened? What's wrong? And the Vasus explained, oh, we were just hanging out and, fooling around, just sort of hanging out, all of us Vasus together. And the sage Vashishta was nearby meditating. And by accident, we didn't know he was there. We disturbed him and he cursed us. And he cursed us that we have to leave the heavenly planets and take birth in the earthly planets. And Ganga was very sorry. She said, oh, I'm so sorry you have to take terrible birth in the nasty earthly planets. So the Vasus begged of Ganga. They said, we have this curse, we can't counteract it. But the thought of appearing in the womb, the nasty womb of one of these earth women, what a disgusting, horrible thought, to appear in that nasty womb of an earth woman. Could you do us a favor? Could you go to the earth planet and live there for a while so that we could be born in your womb, so that we can fulfill the letter of the curse of Vashishta Muni? Let us be born in your womb. And Ganga agreed. And then they asked further, they said, also, thank you for doing that, allowing us to take birth in your womb. But we also request that as soon as we're born, please kill us. We don't want to live on that nasty earth planet. Just kill us and let us return to the heavenly planets right away. And she said, well, oh wait, I'm missing here. Oh yeah, the Vasus also said, and as for who the father should be, we've heard that there's a great king Pratipa and that he will have a glorious son named Shantanu. So you go to him, he'll be the father, and he'll impregnate you the 8 times, and you just give birth to us and kill us, and we'll return to the heavenly planets. So Ganga learned that Shantanu, her husband, was going to be the next incarnation of Mahabish, who they had that little exchange with. And she said, can't we give Shantanu just a little happiness? Can one of you live instead of all of you being killed immediately after? And they agreed. And of course, we know the story. Actually, there's one more little bit of it before it's over. Before Shantanu was even born, Ganga went to the earth planet, and Maharaj Pratipa, the great king I had mentioned, he was already an old man, and he had 99% renounced his kingdom, and he was spending most of his time meditating alone in the forest. So Ganga found him meditating in the forest, and she came and she sat down on his lap, on his right thigh. And Pratipa woke up from his meditation and said, oh, friendly girl, what are you doing? I'm meditating and you've come to sit on my lap. What is this? What are you doing? What do you want? And Ganga says, what do I want? What do you think I want? You're a great, powerful, wonderful king, and I'm a young woman, and I desire to enjoy with you and be your wife. And Pratipa said, that is not possible. First of all, it will break my vow that to never take another wife. And Ganga said, oh, but everyone knows a king can never reject a woman who approaches him for relations. And Pratipa said, no, I'm sorry, I can't do it. I've taken this vow, and to do so would be a great sin. And he said, not only that, but you sat on my right thigh. Everyone knows that the right thigh is the sitting place for the daughter and the daughter-in-law, and the left thigh is reserved for the wife or for the paramour. So in that way, I cannot possibly be your wife, but because you sat on my right thigh, I suggest that if I ever have a son, you come and approach him, and in that way, you could become his wife and become my daughter-in-law. So of course, that was Ganga's plan the whole time. She was not interested in seducing Pratipa. She wanted to obtain his permission ahead of time before Shantanu was even born. And then later Shantanu was born, we know the whole story, met Ganga on the bank of the river and produced the children one after another, and she killed them, and Shantanu couldn't say anything. But then finally, on the 8th child, he spoke up, what are you doing? Don't kill him. And of course, that child, the one Vasu, who was cursed to appear on earth and live his life out there, was of course Devavrata, or Bhishmadev. So all these, look at these kings, these amazing kings, so powerful beyond anything we can imagine, and so religious, and so dharmic, and so charitable, and self-sacrificing, and giving themselves for the benefit of others. This is the example we have. And as for this story that Prabhupada used as the example to describe the heavenly planets, here's an example. Let's say you heard, oh, Acharya went on a cruise, and you want to go on a cruise, and you think, oh, I'll ask Acharya how the cruise was. And you ask me, and I say, oh, the cruise? Oh, the ship was beautiful. It was so big and opulent, and it had, these different restaurants and different games and activities. So beautiful and wonderful and amazing. And what an amazing cruise ship. And you say, oh, the cruise ship was nice. How was the cruise itself? He said, the cruise. And if I say, well, the cruise, oh my God, the cruise, so much trouble to get on the cruise ship, so many forms to fill out, and so much paperwork and standing in line, and so much trouble. And then when I was on the ship, I got in trouble on the ship. And then when the boat stopped in one port, and they kicked me off, and then the boat left without me. And then I had to take a dirty fishing trip to another port to catch up with the cruise ship and get back on the cruise ship. So the cruise ship is very beautiful and opulent, and so much enjoyment on a cruise ship, but it's also full of so much trouble. So you'll think, oh, maybe I don't want to go on that cruise then. That is beautiful and opulent as it is. Maybe I don't want to go on a trip like that with so much trouble and intrigue and up and down, and you get kicked off the ship and you get back on the ship. So this is the example of the heavenly planets that Prabhupada gave with Maharaj Mahabhisha, that the opulence and happiness and sense gratification and long life of the heavenly planets is undeniable. But at the same time, Brahma Bhuvana Loka, Punarartinarjuna Mamupetya Tukonteya Punar Janmanda Vidyate, that even you go to heavenly planets, you go to Brahmaloka, or you're on this earth planet, Punaravartinarjuna, you return. You return why? Mamupetya Tukonteya Punar Janmanda Vidyate. From heavenly planets, earth planets, hellish planets, all of them, birth and death. You rise up, you fall down. You rise up, you fall down. This is not happiness. This is not enjoyment. So the heavenly planets are not enjoyable because the same birth and death, the same material inebrieties are still going on there. Better to sacrifice your life, your wealth, your intelligence, and your words. You sacrifice them for the sake of Krishna. And then Punar Janmanda Vidyate, you'll no longer see repeated birth and death. You'll get a heavenly experience better than the heavenly planets because it never ends. It's never contaminated. It's eternal bliss in pastimes, in relationship, in loving relationship with Krishna. So Prabhupada said, and maybe he was quoting Bhaktisiddhanta, he said, you give up this one life. You sacrifice this one life. You've had so many lives, but now you sacrifice this one life for Krishna. And the benefit you get is so immeasurable, so great, that it outweighs any so-called sacrifice you might ever make. And that's the life of Parikshit Maharaj. He gave it entirely to his duty and to serving Krishna and to serving the populace. And then he was cursed to die. And he did not lament one bit about being cursed to die. And he devoted his life to giving us, to hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, and in that way giving the world Srimad Bhagavatam. Hare Krishna, thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Any questions, comments, or discussion now?
Hare Krishna, dear devotees. So you can unmute and you can ask any question, comment, anything if you have. Yeah, Prabhuji, the class was really, really nice. You know, like very well described about the Bharat Maharaj, you know, like whether he was the son of like Rishabdev or he was the son of Dushyanta, you know, like so. Prabhupada finally, you know, said like he was the son of the Rishabdev. So it was overall, you know, like we covered so many points. It was really, really nice. So class was as usual. It was very wonderful, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. Anything else, question or discussion?
Kalpesh Prabhu.
If not, we can have announcements for tonight.
Yeah, we'll have Prabhu. So Kalpesh Prabhu is having the hand raised. Please go ahead.
We had a
Kalpesh
festival
Prabhu.
Friday, we had a festival Saturday, and Sunday feast is also a festival. So you can never have too many festivals. Yes, go ahead, please.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
I just want to understand the Bhismadev, like as you explained the Vasu, 8 Vasu. So how Bhismadev was a devotee of Krishna, Lord Krishna. So how he took a birth. I'm just trying to understand, like how he, as you explained, he was in the heavenly planet. So like the connection, like how devotee went to the heavenly planet. Can you please explain that?
Yes, I'll try to. One way of understanding it is that it's simply a pastime for the sake of teaching us a lesson and for the sake of the pastimes and instructions of Mahabharata. Another more, I wouldn't say esoteric, but another more internal reason is that many great devotees have simultaneously exist in the spiritual world and at the same time are existing even in the heavenly planets or in the earthly planets. Just like since Krishna Janmashtami just happened, we know how Vasudeva and Devaki, in a previous life, they were, was that Drona and Dara?
They were Krishna and
Sutapa. Right, yeah, thank you. Yep, I'm confusing with something else. Krishna, so they had, Krishna and Sutapa were, you know, I don't know exactly, they were living in the heavenly planets. So that was supposed, and before that, they were the parents of Vamanadev, and so they had this. Yes. So they had this sort of dual existence that Vasudeva and Devaki are certainly eternally the parents of Krishna, but at the same time, they also have this pastime where they're simultaneously existing as the parents of other incarnations as in the heavenly planets or as demigods. So they're going on simultaneously. And again, these unusual pastimes are there to teach us a lesson, and also because they're existing in so many different phases of Krishna's pastimes. We heard when we were hearing about the passing of Bhishma Dev, how Bhishma Dev is eternally with Krishna as he goes through his pastimes, and also eternally with Krishna in the spiritual world, serving him, and also eternally existing, coming for this pastime as one of the Vasus, and then the son of Shantanu, and all these pastimes are going on. And the devotees, as Krishna can expand, the devotees can sometimes expand in these different ways for the sake of Krishna's pastimes. To actually understand it is beyond me, but that's some of the explanation that I've heard about it. Does that help or clarify it at all?
Yep, Prabhuji, thank you very much.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Anything else?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much for a very nice class. You described everything very nicely. And I learned one thing today I didn't know, that about the Shantanu story, how he was cursed to go down to become King Parthiba's son, and how all the Vasus became, and how Ganga and Shantanu got married and Vasus became their sons. So you very nicely connected this story.
Yeah. Well, I had also never heard about this, the Mahabhisha going to the heavenly planets and being cursed either. Like I said, although I've read Prabhupada saying it's described in Mahabharata Adi Parva chapter 26, I never actually looked up Mahabharata Adi Parva chapter 96. And so I looked it up, and that's how I learned it. Otherwise, I hadn't heard it before either. Very incredible story. And actually, Mahabharata is full of so many of these amazing, mind-blowing stories. But I just thought it was really interesting and almost funny how Prabhupada chose that pastime to illustrate the glories, so-called glories of the heavenly planets.
Yeah, Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Hare Krishna.
And actually, with the Ashtavasus, the story is that they tried to steal, and this was just for a joke, trying to steal Vasishta's cows.
Oh, and is that what it was? Okay.
Yeah. So the seven. So there one Vasu was the orchestrator of that whole mischief, and that is why he was punished with long life.
Oh, okay.
And so the other 8 could be immediately killed by Ganga. And so it's amazing how everything fits like a puzzle.
Yeah, it really does fit together perfectly.
Yes. But the point you are making, and the point we really need to understand, is the heavenly planets cannot be our ultimate destination. That is the whole point of it. And it's amazing how we are always thinking of a long life as a blessing. And here, Bhishma was cursed with long life. And then you can see how it all played out. Again, from Bhishma, we can still learn to be, he's a Mahabhagavad, how to be a devotee. So in this morning, I have been in and out of your class because I was attending my other class, but the point is how we need to be conscious every moment and see what we can learn. So where we are is nectar of instruction, and he was going through an overview because next week we have to take a test. And so the point he was making is be conscious, be aware, know what it is you are dealing with. He was talking about the different gradations of devotees, how to be with a Kanishtadhikari, how to be with a Madhyama, how to, and that is the whole point. We just don't blindly, and you also use the word letter of the curse, and recently somebody else was trying to make a point to me, and they said, don't just follow the letter of the instruction, follow the intent. Look beyond it, meaning we really need to be using a lot more of our brain cells.
Nothing should be mechanical.
Exactly.
In the past, like in the Govardhan Hill pastime, When Krishna went to his father, went to Nanda Maharaj and said, tell me what you're doing and explain to me what you're doing and why you're doing it. And at first, Nanda Maharaj, she didn't want to bother explaining, just some trouble. And Krishna said, no, you have to explain, because if you do some activity without full explanation and without full understanding, you won't get the full result. To get the full result, you have to do it with full clarity and full understanding of what you're doing. Thank you, Mother. Hare Krishna. Good luck on your test.
Thank you.
Yes, Devi.
Yeah, just a comment and a question. The comment was, so was it not like Krishna was telling Vasudeva and Devaki, you were my parents in previous lifetime? So one was Krishna and Sutapa, one was Drona and Dhara, and the third one was Devaki and Vasudeva. Am I correct?
I'm not sure. I was remembering the name Drona and Dhara, but I couldn't remember. I don't remember enough to say exactly which is which. I'd have to look it up and see.
I think in Krishna book he said, in the third time I have come here. I said
and who is the child of Drona and Dhara? Which incarnation? Do you remember?
One was Krishna Garbha, one was I can't remember now. I have to go back to Krishna book and see.
Anyway, I'm not sure either. Do you know Mother Shamagori? Is that why your hand's up? A lot of people are raising their hands. Please enlighten us.
Sorry, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Yashoda Maya and Nanda Maharaj were Dara and I forgot.
Oh, Yashoda and Nanda were Drona and Dhara. Okay.
Drona and Dara, yeah.
Yes. Okay. So I remembered a little incorrectly. Thank you for clarifying that. Okay, go on, Devi, please. With your question.
So that was but what's the name of the child?
I don't know. I'll look it up and I'll look it up after class and email you.
Do you know Shamagori?
I don't know about the child of Drona and Dara.
So the verse is 10:849. That's where it is mentioned. So Drona and Dhara said, please permit us to be born on the planet Earth so that after our appearance, the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, the Supreme Controller and Master of all planets, will also appear and spread devotional service, the ultimate goal of life, so that those born in this material world may very easily be delivered from the miserable condition of materialistic life by accepting this devotional service. I think
so
Drona and Dhara are the eternal father and mother of Krishna. They came down as Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj.
Okay.
And I think I too remember, I don't think there is a mention of kids. It's just that they came down.
Yeah, so that they didn't have Krishna as a child in that life.
Yes.
But they performed austerities, so in their next life they could be Nanda and Yashoda. Okay. And at the same time, we also understand that, of course, Nanda and Yashoda are the eternal. It's not that they had to become Nanda and Yashoda. Nanda and Yashoda are also the eternal parents. This is all just how the pastimes interact.
Yeah. So Prabhupada explains in the purport that whenever there is a necessity of Krishna's appearance, Drona and Dhara appear first, and then Krishna appears.
Thank you. Devi, you had another comment or question?
Yes, very quickly. There was lots of stories in your class. It was good, but I was curious because I did not really, I came late from the temple and I did not hear the beginning of the class. Could you tell me what's the link of all the stories in one sentence, if you can?
In one sentence, Shibi Maharaj, you know the story of Shibi Maharaj? Yes. How he was willing. So Shibi Maharaj Parikshit is glorified, comparing him to Shibi because of his essential quality of being willing to sacrifice for the benefit of others. He's compared to Dushyanti Bharata Maharaj because of his great power and his great strength. So my basic point to sum up in one sentence is that a great king, a great kshatriya, or a great devotee has to have both of these. He has to have potency And he also has to have proper sense of being willing to sacrifice for other and understanding dharma and principles of religion. And that if you have one without the other, it can be an imbalance, like Maharaj Vena, who had the power, but he didn't have the dharma.
Okay, thank you.
Brief summary.
Yes, very well.
Okay, I think we could, if there's any announcements, and then we can end.
The only announcement is the Sunday feast this afternoon. Please, all of you, join us there. It's a great way. I know it has been a long, enlivening weekend, but it's always nice to come back to the temple after that and celebrate what we just celebrated. So please join us. I don't know who the speaker is, but I'm sure it will be wonderful. So.
Okay, thank you very much for your kind attention, everybody. Hare Krishna, have a great day. Panchakalpatarubhyascha, Kripasinubheva Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Nice
Hare
talk.
Krishna.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.